Hey everyone, this is going to be my Protection Warrior guide for Mythic Plus. This video will be an overview of the entire class of Protection Warrior, but also it'll give you a bunch of tips for Mythic Plus, the talent trees that we use, and the tips that I can give you for playing this class at a Mythic level. Let's go ahead and get into it. Mostly we will be looking at Mountain Thane. We will not be looking a lot at Colossus because Colossus grants a bunch of damage, I feel like, but it doesn't give us a ton of defensives, where Mountain Thane gives us a really good balance of damage, but it also gives us a lot of defensive stats. Let's go ahead and look at the warrior tree. This will be a generalized warrior tree that you will be using. Really, the only thing that you guys should have to worry about possibly switching is the endurance training. Endurance training does give you a lot of stamina, and it does help with some incapacitation effects, but I feel like mostly you will be using this. If you do get to the point where you feel like you are tanky enough and you have the defensive that you need and you're getting used to the class, you can take this off. You can put one into one-handed weapon specialization, which increases your damage and leech by 5%, and also using another point into piercing challenge, which increases basically your champion spear by 50% and your rage generation is increased by 100%. So it gives you a lot more damage, and gives you a lot more damage with your champion spear, but also it helps you generate more rage, which gives you more damage output. But I think for now, I would put both of these points into endurance training, and that's what I would stick with for the generalized tree. For the protection tree, this will be the generalized talent tree that you will be using. I do personally like Ravager. I know that you can take Ravager off and put it on Battle Scarred Veteran, which basically acts as a purgatory if you know Blood DK, if you play Blood DK. Battle Scar basically does the exact same thing. So when your health is brought below 30%, you take 80% less damage for 8 seconds. And healing you received is increased by 100%. This is really good if you're really struggling to stay alive, but for most of the time I would use Ravager just for the extra damage, the extra AoE, and the extra rage regeneration. The only other thing that you can change about this build is eventually, once you get used to some Mythic Plus, you get some gear, you're starting to do higher keys, you're getting a lot of haste on your build, you can change out heavy repercussions and put that into the fray. You gain 2% haste for each enemy or ally within 10 yards, up to 8% haste. So basically it just is multiplicative if you have a lot of haste, which for Protection Warrior, that is your primary stat. So this is a really good thing that you can use, but for now I would stay with heavy repercussions, and this would be your generalized build. Let's go ahead and talk about UI. Our main resource is Rage. As you can see on my Rage bar, you can see it's going up by me meleeing or thunderclapping or using Shield Bash, it's going up. Our main source of outcome for the Rage is basically using it on Ignore Pain. There will sometimes be where you use it on Revenge for more damage, but most of the time you want to use it on defensives and use it for Ignore Pain. Let's go ahead and talk about your CDs or your cooldowns. There's going to be two abilities that you definitely want to keep off cooldown. You're going to want to keep your Shield Slam off cooldown, and you're going to keep your Thunderclap off cooldown. These are going to be your main rage generators for your Ignore Pain, so you want to make sure these are constantly being used in rotation. You want to use all your rage, or the majority of your rage, for Ignore Pain, which reduces the incoming damage by 50%, up to 1.8 million total damage prevented. Now, I believe that can go higher depending on if you have endurance training and stuff like that. It does mitigate a lot of damage, so you basically always want to have Ignore Pain up. The other thing that I want to talk about is Shield Block. Shield Block is insanely valuable as a Protection Warrior. You want to always have Shield Block up. Shield Block raises your shield, blocking all melee attacks against you for 8 seconds. So that mitigates an absolute crap ton of damage. They also can be critical blocks, which increases your Shield Slam's damage by 30% while active. So Shield Block you always want to have up. You want to at least have one token on cooldown and another one sitting for after that token is done. You can use both tokens at once, and they do stack on each other, as I will show you right here. If you're using enough rage, you can stack both of them, and they will stack on seconds, so you won't be losing any time. And by the time this is done, you will have another token ready. But if you do a pool, I would always have Shield Block up. Let's continue talking about your defensives. Protection Warrior has a lot of defensives. Obviously, I've already talked about Ignore Pain and Shield Block, but it also has Spell Reflection. Spell Reflection raises your shield, reflecting the first spell cast on you, and reduces magic damage you take by 25% for 5 seconds. This can be used in trash pools. Can be used against bosses. It is a very high priority defensive that you can use. Now you will have to know the mechanics of the Mythic Plus that you'll be doing, so you'll know when you can use this and when you can't, so you're not just wasting it, but it is a very high priority defensive. The next defensive we'll talk about is Demoralizing Shout. Demoralizing Shout demoralizes all enemies within 15 yards and reduces the damage they deal to you by 25%. This basically will be off cooldown every time you pull a group. It is a very short cooldown. It's only 45 seconds. By the time you do one pull, it's going to be close to up, if not up, by the time you do the next pull. So I would usually use this off cooldown. Avatar transforms you into Colossus for 20 seconds, causing you to deal 20% increased damage and removing all roots and snares. Basically, both of these you will be using off cooldown. They're both very short cooldowns. Avatar increases your damage by a lot. It also can remove CC, so if you're ever rooted or snared or something like that and you need to get out, Avatar is a great use. So basically, and it also, fun fact, it resets your cooldown of your Thunderclap. So you can charge in, Thunderclap, Avatar, and Thunderclap another group so that you have the aggro and you can pull them into you. The next defensive we'll talk about is Shield Wall. This is a much longer cooldown, but it can be used in a lot of good scenarios like boss fights or massive trash pulls. Shield Wall reduces all damage you take by 40% for 8 seconds. Shield Wall can be used in a very big pool if you know you're going to take a lot of damage and Ignore Pain, and Shield Block isn't really holding it. Demoralizing Shout isn't giving you enough damage reduction. You can use this against a big trash pull or mainly a boss. If you know there's going to be a very big tank buster hit coming in, you know you're not going to survive it, you can pop the Shield Wall and it will reduce incoming damage by 40%. The next one we'll talk about is Last Stand. Last Stand increases maximum health by 30% for 15 seconds. It instantly heals you for that amount. So this is another one like Shield Wall where you can use when a boss is going to give you a really big tank buster hit, you know, I'm not going to survive this, and you can pop Last Stand. It's a really good defensive. It just is on a very long cooldown. Rally Cry, granting all party or raid members within 40 yards 10% temporary max health for 10 seconds. So basically, you know, if there's a mechanic coming out that's going to wipe the group, or you know, DPS are low or a healer's low or you're low, you can pop Rally Cry and it'll give you a 10% temporary max health bonus. So it can be a make or break if a mechanic is going wrong or your group's going to wipe to a trash pull or something like that. The last one we're going to talk about is Spell Block. Spell Block can basically block all spells for 30 seconds. Now this can be used primarily in boss fights, but it also is very, very good in trash pools. So now, once again, it's one of those defensives. You need to do your research and learn about the dungeons and find out what can be blocked by this Spell Block and what can't. But Spell Block is a very, very, very good defensive and a highly prioritized defensive as a protection warrior. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about stat prioritization. For protection warriors, obviously item level above all else, especially when you're leveling or you're starting out in Mythic Plus. But once you get into the fine details, you want to prioritize haste as your number 1, verse as your number 2, and then for your third stat, it would either be crit or mastery. Protection warriors do get a lot of valuable resources from haste, as in rage regeneration and damage and all kinds of stuff. So I would definitely prioritize haste. Let's go ahead and talk about our general opener. Number 1, cast your charge button on a priority target. After you've gotten to that priority target, go ahead and use your shield charge to generate more rage and to have more AoE damage. Number 3, grab aggro of the pack by using Thunderclap. Number 4, cast shield block and ignore pain off cooldown with as much rage as you have. Next, you want to use your avatar to reset your Thunderclap cooldown and to give you that bonus 20% increased damage. The next thing you want to do is, once you have those packs grouped, cast Ravager and Demo Shout. After that, you want to cast Champion's Spear for more AoE damage and rage regeneration. After that, you basically want to keep Ignore Pain and Shield Block up like we talked about earlier. After that, basically all you have to do is continue using Shield Bash and Thunderclap off CD like a normal rotation, and making sure that your Ignore Pain is up and Shield Block is up constantly. For my last section, I want to give you guys a little bit of tips for Protection Warrior and things that I have learned over my years of playing this spec. Number 1, never overcap your rage. If you're sitting constantly at 100%, you need to be using on Ignore Pain. You can spam Ignore Pain as much as you want. You can cap that out as much as you want. Just try to never sit at 100% rage bar at all times. You could either be using it for more damage. If you're maxed out Ignore Pain, make sure you're using it for more damage. But if not, make sure you are capped out on ignore pain and the timer is constantly being reset. Number 2, always keep shield slam and thunderclap on a consistent cooldown. Never have that up, always spam it. It just increases your rage regeneration and makes sure that your rend bleed goes out and increases your damage output tenfold. Always make sure they are on a cooldown. Number 3, always stay in defensive stance and keys. Never go into battle stance. It's a 3% crit. It's just not worth the defensive that you lose, especially if you're doing anything above a +10. You're just going to be taking too much damage. It's going to be making your healer overheal or use way too much mana when they could be using mana on the DPS instead of you because you have so much damage mitigation. So my tip to you is always stay in defensive stance. There's no reason to go into battle stance at all. And this is all I really have for you guys. This is my guide on the Protection Warrior for Mythic Plus. It's a very simple tank to play. There's a lot of defensive cooldowns you can use, but the rotations are extremely simple. It's one of the tankiest tanks out there in my opinion. It's a really fun tank to play, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys really did enjoy this video, make sure you sub to my channel and also follow me on TikTok and Instagram for more content like this. I'll see you guys in the next one.